Today I'm going to talk about chess. Chess is a centuries-old worldwide table game turned esport phenomenon, and although modern chess has a stable set of internationally accepted rules, it has seen plenty of rule changes and variant games developed during its long history. So while we often think of chess by this internationally dominant rule set, it's more accurately described as a family of games with a common set of shared design principles and rules. Now, the reason I want to talk about chess today is to give a bit of background for WildChess, which is a chess implementation I've made using Rust and the Bevy engine. The core idea behind WildChess is really to explore sort of these chess games, this family of games that, games that aren't actually chess, but definitely are sort of chess-like. And try to have a single implementation that allows me to explore all of these different modes and do so in as flexible a way as possible. I'll also say that I'm going to try to keep this pretty high level. I don't want to be teaching you how to play chess in this video. I don't want to be kind of explaining how all the pieces move or anything like that. None of this video will be technical. It's purely going to be about design. I'm just going to try and talk about what wild chess is supposed to be and why I think it's interesting. And to do that, I really have to go into what defines, at least to me, this family of games that I'm calling chess. In the next video, I'm going to dive into the actual tech and just use that as a way to describe how Bevy and Rust facilitated sort of the modular design of this project. It's my first turn-based project with Bevy, so it comes with the added benefit of, acting as a nice starting point for other turn-based games in the future. But for now, we can ignore all that, so if you're interested in the tech, you'll have to wait until next time. Right now, it's design time. First, I want to take a little more time to break down what I mean when I talk about chess as a family of games. First off, from a historical perspective, it's very definitely not a single game. Chess is thought to be a descendant of the ancient Indian game Chaturanga, which had very similar rules. And today, the Western descendant of Chaturanga, known as chess, is that international phenomenon, chess, but there are also many similar games local to various regions, especially in Eastern and Southern Asia, that are very similar to chess and originated from Chaturanga, shogi being a prime example. Chess has also developed a ton of variants over the years, games on a chessboard with usually one or two small but very impactful rule changes. Many chess players have fallen in love with variants like Crazy House or Atomic Chess or Duck Chess is a recent one at some point in their chess career. It's very common. And this phenomenon of chess as like a gameplay system extends into video game culture. There are video games like the Ouroboros King, a new game called Mad Chess, and even puzzle rush modes on popular chess websites that simulate the chess experience in more of a single-player sort of campaign or high-score-driven way. So chess is clearly not just one game. Each of these different chess-like games define their rules in specific ways that might only be small variations from actual chess, but ways that create really significant differences in what the player experience feels like, whether it's, going up against opponent head-to-head or just trying to get your best score in Puzzle Rush. In fact, there have been some very recent developments in the international chess community focused around variants. In 2020, the researchers at DeepMind, who made the AlphaZero chess engine, which was transformative in the chess community, they put out a white paper alongside top grandmaster chess player Vladimir Kramnik, as well as others. And that white paper used AlphaZero to basically explore various rule changes that top-level chess tournaments could consider adopting for the sake of the competitive health of the game. To quote the white paper on what they mean by that, it says here, there is growing interest in chess variants like Fischer random chess because of classical chess's voluminous opening theory, the high percentage of draws in professional play, and the non-negligible number of games that end while both players are still in their home preparation. Now, most of those points introduce topics that people could spend hours and hours talking about, so suffice it to say for now that people take this stuff really seriously, and there is sort of a growing interest to see what else chess can be. That variant mentioned at the start of the quote, Fischer random chess, is also known as Chess 960, and when the paper says, there's growing interest in it, it's not just growing interest, there's world chess championships for Chess 960 now that are played by top-level grandmasters, like the same people that are playing in the classical world championships. Funnily enough, Chess 960, the reason it's called Fischer random chess, is it was developed by Bobby Fischer, who was world chess champion from 1972 to 1975, and is something of a legend in the chess world for a number of reasons. There's like a movie on it. Go look him up if you don't know anything about this. And yeah, he's actually not the only chess champion to develop a variant either. Way back in the 1920s, Jose Raul Capablanca also made his own variant for chess that you can find called Capablanca chess. And his reasoning for that, if you go to the Wikipedia page, is basically that he also thought chess would be sort of played out in the near future, that there would be too many draws for competitive chess to be realistically playable at the top level. Clearly that hasn't proved entirely true, since chess is still a popular game and still played in big, top level tournaments. But it definitely speaks to a certain sentiment amongst high level players. Before I continue, I'm not like a grandmaster chess player. I'm not a particularly amazing chess player at all. I'm a decent amateur. I'm a decent amateur at best for like a casual player. I don't like study the game at this point in my life, and I haven't in a very long time. But the game is very interesting to me as a whole, and I've always really enjoyed playing chess variants, so I do consider myself reasonably capable of discussing this topic, at least at a surface level. So, what are these things that make chess feel like chess? And what rules and mechanics are consistent across chess games? Well, chess is a turn-based game on a square grid between two players, each with their own set of the same set of pieces. Typically, both players have the same starting position, so even though one player moves first, the beginning of the game is supposedly equal. Players take turns attacking each other's positions by moving one piece at a time, and these pieces are violently armed using the power of geometry. Each piece has some predefined geometric pattern that it can use to advance on the enemy position. Like maybe this piece can move diagonally, or this piece can move orthogonally, and this piece has some other weird way it moves. And if a piece lands on a square occupied by an enemy piece, that enemy piece is captured and taken off the board. The end goal of any chess game is to capture the enemy king. In international chess, this is codified by checkmate, which is a position where the king cannot avoid being captured, signaling the end of the game. Now, all of these details are pretty much universal to chess. Some variants have attempted incorporating more players, and there's actually an online variant known as Kung Fu Chess, which makes chess a real-time game. But for the most part, we can consider the elements I just described foundational to chess as a family. Now, if you've played a significant amount of chess before, you probably know that this doesn't really explain the experience at all. These are maybe some base rules, but they don't really tell you anything about what it's like to play a game of chess. In fact, when I speak to non-chess players or chess beginners, one of the most common points of confusion that I hear is I understand how the pieces move, but I don't get what I'm supposed to do with them. I don't get how to actually decide on what a useful move is. It's not easy to intuit. It's really not easy to figure out an intuition about chess. The game is very deep. There's a really big search space of options, and there are a lot of heuristics and analytic approaches that can be used as strong central principles to help make that search space a lot smaller. But it's not necessarily easy to come up with all of those things on your own. So these central principles are usually what's taught sort of first in beginner chess courses to give you a foothold and help you understand at least how to think about chess. The reasoning behind these principles usually starts from a much more intuitive place. Things like, it's good not to lose pieces unless you get something in return, right? It's good to attack the enemy king. It's good for your king not to be attacked. And in that way, it's good to hide your king, right? It's good for your pieces to target the same enemy pieces so that if the opponent defends them, you can recapture with another piece yourself. Another good one is it's good for your pieces to be able to move to a lot of squares. And in this way, it's easy to derive that for most pieces, the center squares are actually the best squares that they can occupy. One last thing about chess is that it's good not to run out of time. Chess usually has a clock for each player, where any time that it's your turn, your clock is ticking down, and so when you run out of time, you lose. So it's also really important to make your decisions quickly, or at least quickly enough. Now, out of these starting points and the rules for how each piece moves, a beginner chess student begins to learn what it means to have various features in a given position. For example, some positions you might control a lot of space. This usually refers to like having squares available to your pieces. Your pieces could move to those squares that are generally not accessible to the other side's pieces, even in some number of turns, right? There's also a concept of like time in chess. Each player takes turns, and how many turns that you have to make sort of moves that aren't dealing with things your opponent is doing. You might have positions where you have a lot of turns available to you, whereas in other turns, gaining tempo on your opponent for even a single turn can be critical and can be decisive. There are also many tactical features that help determine like when a piece is strong or weak, or that might like trap a piece on a particular square. And these can compose and combine in really interesting and unexpected ways, which lead to like high complexity and lead to surprise, even using the heuristics that we described before. And these characteristics are really important not only for classical chess, but also for wild chess, because they appear sort of no matter what variant of chess or what version of chess in the chess family you're playing. They're intrinsic to the behaviors of like the turn-based geometry game that sort of is foundationally defining chess. As you start to actually play games and try to use these principles to your advantage, it becomes very clear very quickly how easy it is to completely blunder in chess, making critical errors that can just lose you the game entirely on the spot. That's totally normal. That's an experience that everybody in chess shares. And that's just because the game has such a massive option space, as well as so many various things that like you kind of have to keep track of at any given time. I like to describe playing chess as fencing on a tightrope. Sure, the dream is that you're going to make some beautiful maneuver and stab your opponent, but it's really a lot more likely that one of you is going to fall off the rope first. I wish I could say this was just true for beginners, but it's kind of a shared experience for almost all chess players. It's more like if you don't feel that way, then you're probably an incredibly strong player playing against other incredibly strong players. And in that way, the goal in most games becomes just try to make incremental improvements to your position. Try to pose problems to your opponent and hope that they mess them up. And generally survive the chaos. To me, this is when chess is the most fun. But to become a skilled player, you really want to do the opposite. It's so advantageous to learn as much as you can ahead of time, to have an opening prepared that you know about and where you know what the good and bad moves are ahead of time, because it minimizes the amount of time you need to spend dealing with surprises and dealing with like finding the right plans in a given position. And once you're armed with that level of preparation, it feels much more risky to sort of step outside of it and be in any sort of position, whether created by you or your opponent, where you know less about what's going on. And going back to our earlier discussion about variance and why variance can be interesting, this is really what makes Fisher Random special. In Fisher Random, the only change that's made to the game is that the back line of pieces, all your pieces that aren't sort of just the pawns, like the weakest pieces, they get shuffled. And it's not a totally random shuffle. There's a few rules that are used in the process, but the point is that you can't actually expect anything about the starting position unless you were to search 960 different possible starting positions and do opening preparation on every single one of them, which is just not practical at all. Yet it's really noticeable that even though the starting position is different, all of the main features I talked about before of different ways that the board can take shape and different sort of structural patterns you can see on the board, those all still come up in a regular game of Chess 960. It's still the same game. Fisher Random Chess is really cool for that reason, but I kind of want to get a little more wild with it. After all, Fisher Random is just shuffling the back line of pieces. And that DeepMind paper actually suggests a number of wacky rule changes, things like changing how pawns move, or changing how captures work so that you can capture your own pieces. Wild chess is intended to support all these types of ways of playing. And in fact, not just to support them, but actually to encourage players to play something that they're totally not expecting, something with totally different rules and pieces than they might be prepared for. Now, to its credit, chess.com actually supports this sort of custom rules page where you can mix and match the variants that they support to some degree. And as far as I know, it works just fine, but it's hidden away. Really, like, there's no like matchmaking for it. It's not exactly very easy to play, and I think that's a shame. Additionally, part of the fun of Fischer Random Chess is that you don't know what position you're going to start in until you start the game, and it's kind of a shame that like there's no way to shuffle the variant rules or anything like that, really, as far as I can tell. Ultimately, WildChess is still in development and very, very, I haven't implemented nearly as much as I'd like to yet. But it does have a lot of these ideas at the core, and sort of the code is built in a way that's supposed to support all of these different directions in the future. Like I said before, I'll get into that more next video. But for now, let's just take a look at what WildChess looks like right now, and what a game might look like if you were to play it. So this is what WildChess looks like right now. And the first thing you'll notice is that the icons look nothing like chess pieces, or at least nothing like the typical chess piece icons. That's because the first thing that I've implemented with WildChess is having randomly generated pieces. Now I'd like that to be a sort of a guided randomness, and there's a lot I can talk about there, but before I go more into it, it is random, and it really just generates whatever the heck it feels like right now. So to support that, I couldn't really just show like, here's the knight icon, but it's something totally different. People have like deep associations between the icons and how they expect it to move. So rather than, tie people up and make them remember a million new icons or whatever, I figured it would be easier just to show like the squares, or at least some general sense of the squares that each piece can move to on the tile itself. This idea is pretty heavily borrowed from the Lee Shogi, I don't know what to call this like icon set they use, but basically the point on these tiles is that all the dots represent like it can move one square in that direction, and the arrows mean it can move as many squares as it wants. So the same thing is true on mine. If there's a single dot, it can move one square, and then 2, 3 means 2 and 3. And if there's an arrow, it can just go until it reaches the end of the board, or like another piece. There's also like colors to these. So black means that it can go to the squares, but it can also capture a piece on that square. In classical chess, there's like a concept of being able to move, but also separately being able to capture, right? Pawns traditionally can move forward, but they can only capture diagonally. And so I've incorporated that as well. So pieces can have patterns that they can only move in or only attack in. And I don't know, this is really just an experiment, I guess, is the point when it comes down to it, right? And I do really mean that. Like, part of the goal here, I mean, obviously a lot of this is way outside, the sort of scope of resources that I have available to me, but it would be really cool to do what the DeepMind white paper did to some degree, where you kind of throw a computer at all of these and just see like, out of all the possible games that it generates, like which sets of pieces and which combinations of pieces are sort of more likely to create games that are more interesting. And that's going to require, of course, like some level of player intuition and actually like having experience playing these games as well. And I'm sure that some players will find that they particularly enjoy a certain like style of chess game, right? Maybe they find that like they really enjoy chess games with more short range pieces than normal, more pieces that are better in closed positions, or highly structural positions. Maybe they find the opposite, that they like lots of really strong and really powerful pieces and just love hurling them at each other, right? It would be really cool for WildChess as it continues to be able to kind of tailor what type of board it generates based on a certain set of heuristics based on those central principles that I've described about chess before. And importantly, like those things about, center control, structure, space, whatever, like they're not going to go away just because there are random pieces involved. Now that said, like there is something special to the way that chess has its pieces set up. Each piece in chess has a very specific identity, and that identity does something for like not only player style, but also how you expect to use it. And they create a lot of like the interesting facets of the ways that the games tend to play out sort of comes from these identities that pieces tend to have. Knights are tricky. It's a good example, right? So one of the things that I really want to avoid as I sort of dive into, more and more random generation of these things is I'd like to avoid just having pieces be like whatever the heck, right? It should be important for them to have at least some sort of identity, and ideally for that identity to be relatively unique relative to other pieces. All right, so this video has gotten long enough now that the lighting has started changing pretty consistently in the last few cuts. So I think I'm going to try and wrap up there. But hopefully this gives some of the ideas behind like what I want to explore with WildChess. And obviously I don't really consider this like a complete design in any way. It's very much meant to be an exploration. So if you're interested in chess and you're interested in chess variants or really just exploring what else chess can be, then I encourage you to play WildChess with a friend. And let me know what you think, and let me know what you didn't like or did like about the game, or about your board in particular, so that I can refine the experience more better. Anyway, if you've made it this far, I really appreciate it, and I can't thank you enough, really, for taking interest in my project. If you have, you probably would be interested in following the channel, so feel free to like, subscribe, whatever else you're interested in, and definitely provide some feedback in the comments if you have any thoughts. That's it for me. If you want to take a look at the game devlog series, that should be linked somewhere over one of these directions. I'm still new to this, and my next video will continue in that playlist. But if you are interested in these types of like design time videos, please let me know and please share, because this is all very new to me, and I'm still trying to figure out like exactly what people are interested in watching. So this should be in a separate playlist, and anyway, all of that stuff. But yeah, feedback welcome. Thank you so much, and have a good day.